August 23rd, 1942, 16:18 hours. Stalingrad, southern Volga bank. The first bombs fall without warning. Windows implode inward. Brick facades peel away like skin. The air itself seems to tear, a violent pressure wave punching breath from lungs and hurling bodies across rooms. Somewhere below, the Volga flashes silver for a heartbeat, then disappears behind a rising wall of smoke. Junkers Ju-88s roar overhead, low and relentless, their engines droning like machinery designed not to frighten, but to erase. One wave follows another, then another. Incendiaries burst across rooftops, spilling fire that races along wooden beams and tarred surfaces. Entire streets ignite at once. People run, then stumble, then crawl. A tram explodes mid-intersection, its metal frame twisting, passengers thrown into the street like debris. A fuel depot along the riverfront erupts in a rolling firestorm, flames leaping high enough to blot out the sky. Barges break their moorings, drifting a flame downstream, spreading destruction with the current. By nightfall, Stalingrad is unrecognizable. From the air, it looks finished. To German observers watching from reconnaissance aircraft, the city appears neutralized, flattened, burning, silenced. The Luftwaffe has done what it was designed to do. It has broken resistance before it can properly form. In Berlin, the reports read clean and confident. Bombardment successful. Urban infrastructure destroyed. Enemy morale shattered. For Field Marshal Friedrich Paulus, commanding the German Sixth Army, this is confirmation. This is how modern war works. Firepower first. Movement second. Victory follows. He studies maps marked with advanced routes, broad arrows slicing through what was once a city. The plan is simple. Infantry and panzers move in, sweep aside whatever remains, secure the Volga, and end Soviet resistance in the south. Stalingrad, after all, is already dead. On the ground, the reality is different. Inside a collapsing cellar near the Tsaritsa River, Soviet civilians and Red Army soldiers press together in darkness. Dust coats their faces, turning skin the same gray as the rubble around them. A child coughs. A soldier tightens his grip on a Mosin-Nagant rifle, knuckles white, listening to the ceiling groan under the weight of destruction. Another explosion. Closer. Up on the surface, entire apartment blocks fold inward, creating jagged canyons of brick and concrete. Stairwells collapse into themselves. Floors vanish, leaving open shafts where rooms once existed. Streets are buried under layers of rubble so thick that vehicles can no longer pass. This is not open terrain. This is a maze. By the next morning, German forward elements approach the city's edge. Infantry of the 295th Division move cautiously through smoke-filled streets, rifles at the ready, boots crunching over glass and masonry. There are no clear sight lines, no intact roads. Every window is a potential firing position. Every pile of debris could hide a man with a grenade. A sniper's shot cracks the air. One soldier drops without a sound. The Germans return fire instinctively, burst into windows, into shadows, but there is no visible enemy. The sound seems to come from everywhere and nowhere at once. Above them, half-destroyed buildings loom, their upper floors still intact, offering angles no training manual prepared them for. This is not how the city was supposed to behave. German doctrine is built on movement, speed, coordination between armor, infantry, and air support. But here, panzers struggle to advance. Rubble blocks their paths. Craters force detours. Tanks are forced into narrow approaches where their guns cannot depress far enough to engage targets directly below them. Soviet riflemen exploit this instantly. From basements, from sewers, from shattered stairwells, they emerge in small groups, 3, 4 men at a time. They strike at close range. A burst from a PPSH-41, a grenade rolled under a tank's belly. Then they vanish back into the debris. The ruins swallow them. Paulus receives the first reports by evening. Progress slower than expected. Resistance heavier than anticipated. Urban fighting ongoing. He is not alarmed. Not yet. Cities always take time. The Luftwaffe has done its work. This is merely the final clearing operation. The Red Army cannot survive in a place this destroyed. There is nothing left to fight from. But that assumption is already wrong. Because the destruction has changed the rules. Every collapsed building has created firing angles that favor the defender. Every crater offers cover. Every pile of brick absorbs artillery blast, reducing its effect. Radio communication falters as units lose line of sight and orientation. German squads begin to fight isolated, cut off by walls that did not exist a day before. Meanwhile, on the eastern bank of the Volga, Soviet reinforcements wait in darkness. They can see the city burning. They can smell it. Officers speak quietly, issuing orders that abandon old formations. No broad assaults. No mass movement. Fight in small units. Stay close. Deny the enemy distance. One command circulates again and again, not one step back. The Germans do not hear this. What they hear is the crack of rifles from impossible directions, the thump of grenades from beneath their feet, the whisper of movement through walls they believed solid. By the end of the first day, Stalingrad is still burning, and the Sixth Army has entered a city that refuses to behave like a corpse. The Luftwaffe has erased the city from a map, but in doing so, it has built something else in its place. A weapon. Dawn, August 25, 1942. The smoke still hasn't lifted. It clings to the ruins like a living thing, crawling through shattered windows and down collapsed stairwells. The sun rises somewhere above it, but inside Stalingrad there's only a gray twilight, permanent, disorienting, claustrophobic. German infantry move forward in short rushes, boots sliding on dust and powdered brick. Orders come down from platoon leaders in sharp whispers. Clear the block, secure the intersection, push to the river. Every step forward costs blood. The city has fractured the battlefield into 1,000 private wars. There are no flanks here, no rear, only angles, shadows, and distances measured in meters, sometimes in centimeters. A German squad edges past a burned-out tramcar. A Soviet grenade rolls from beneath it, clinks once, then detonates. Smoke clears to reveal bodies folded unnaturally against twisted metal. The tram's bell rings once more before falling silent. This is not maneuver warfare. This is survival. The Sixth Army tries to adapt. Assault engineers bring flamethrowers forward, blasting fire into basements before infantry rushes in behind them. Sturmpioneer clears stairwells with demolition charges. Tanks advance cautiously, guns depressed, firing point-blank into suspected strong points. And still, the city resists. Snipers dominate the ruins. They fire once, then disappear, shifting positions through holes smashed in walls by bombing, crawling through ventilation shafts, slipping into sewer lines that connect entire districts underground. German officers are targeted deliberately. Anyone who pauses too long, anyone who points. A Feldwebel raises his binoculars and collapses mid-breath. A lieutenant steps into the open to wave his men forward and never finishes a motion. Fear spreads faster than orders. Inside the rubble of a shattered apartment block, a Soviet sniper waits motionless for hours, finger resting lightly on the trigger of a Mosin Nagant. He listens to German voices echo through the debris, judges distance by sound alone. One shot, one kill, then gone. The Germans begin calling it Rattenkrieg, Rat War. They are not wrong. The Red Army has no intention of retreating. Stalin's orders already reached the front, not one step back. Blocking detachments stand behind the lines, grim and silent, enforcing discipline with loaded rifles. There will be no surrender, no withdrawal across the Volga without permission. For the men defending Stalingrad, there's only forward or death. Reinforcements arrive at night, under constant Luftwaffe attack. Barges and ferries cross the Volga in darkness. Engines muffled, decks crowded with fresh riflemen, ammunition crates, and medical supplies. Many boats never make it. Bombs tear them apart mid-river. Tracers rake the water, turning crossings into killing zones. Those who survive step onto the western bank already under fire. They are not briefed. They are not trained for this environment. They are simply pointed toward the ruins and told to hold them. Some are factory workers issued rifles hours earlier. Others are barely old enough to shave. They disappear into the smoke, swallowed by the city. General Vasily Chukov takes command of the 62nd Army and immediately understands the truth. If the Germans can use artillery and air power, Stalingrad will fall. So he denies them both. His solution is brutal in its simplicity. Get close. So close that German artillery risks hitting its own troops. So close that air strikes become impossible without killing friendlies. Soviet units are ordered to cling to German positions, to fight within grenade range, to never allow separation. The battle compresses into a nightmare. German and Soviet soldiers occupy the same buildings, sometimes different floors, sometimes opposite sides of the same wall. Fighting erupts suddenly. A door kicked open, a burst of submachine gun fire, a scream cut short. Control of a single room can change hands 5 times in a day. Factories become fortresses. At the Red October, barricade, and tractor factory complexes, assembly lines are smashed but not silent. Workers repair T-34 tanks under fire, rolling them straight from the factory floor into combat. Paint still wet, crews barely trained. German soldiers watch in disbelief as tanks emerge from smoke-choked buildings they thought neutralized. Maps become useless. What was a street yesterday is now a crater. What was rubble becomes a defensive line overnight. German officers redraw plans constantly, only to find the terrain has changed again by morning. Supply lines stretch thin. Ammunition runs low. Water is rationed. Casualties mount. Paulus presses forward regardless. Every meter of ground must be taken. Every factory must fall. Berlin demands results. Hitler expects Stalingrad to be seized, not merely for strategy, but for symbolism. The city bears Stalin's name. Its capture is meant to be a declaration. But declarations mean nothing inside the ruins. Here, victory is measured in rooms, in stairwells, in bodies dragged behind cover, and left there because retrieval is impossible. The Luftwaffe continues bombing, but its effectiveness diminishes. Smoke obscures targets. Soviet positions are too close to German lines. Bombs meant for defenders collapse buildings onto advancing attackers. The weapon designed to break the city now breaks the assault. By early September, the Sixth Army is exhausted. Divisions are hollowed out, reduced to combat groups. Replacements arrive slower than casualties accumulate. Morale frays. And yet, Paulus believes he is winning. The Germans hold most of the city. Soviet defenders cling to narrow strips of land along the Volga, sometimes only a few hundred meters deep. On maps, Stalingrad looks nearly conquered, but maps cannot show what the ruins have done. They have erased speed. They have erased coordination. They have erased the advantage that carried the Wehrmacht across Europe. Inside Stalingrad, the Germans are no longer hunters. They are trapped in a city that refuses to die. And as autumn approaches, a different kind of danger begins to gather beyond the ruins. Far from the rubble, far from the snipers, far from the factories. Out on the open steppe, where tanks can move freely again, Soviet formations begin to assemble in silence. Paulus does not see them. September turns to October 1942. Inside Stalingrad, time loses meaning. Days blur into a constant rhythm of gunfire, screams, and collapsing masonry. The city is reduced to a skeleton of brick and steel, yet the fighting only grows more vicious. German soldiers joke grimly that the ruins are haunted, that the dead are doing the shooting now. But beyond the city, the war is changing. Far to the north and south of Stalingrad, the front stretches thin across open steppe. Here, the terrain is flat, exposed, and unforgiving, the kind of ground German armored doctrine once dominated. But the Sixth Army's best divisions are tied down in the city, bleeding themselves dry for blocks that hold no strategic value. To hold the flanks, Germany relies on allies. Romanian Third and Fourth Armies man long sectors with outdated anti-tank guns, few tanks, and thin reserves. Italian and Hungarian units stand even farther out, spread across vast distances they cannot properly defend. Their orders are simple. Hold the line. They're given no depth, no mobile reserves, no margin for error. Soviet planners notice immediately. In Moscow, the Stavka studies reports with growing confidence. Georgy Zhukov and Alexander Vasilevsky see what Paulus cannot. The Germans are overcommit, exhausted, and exposed. The city has fixed the Sixth Army in place, exactly as intended. The counterstroke is given a name, Operation Uranus. Its goal is not to retake Stalingrad street by street. It is far more ambitious and far more lethal. The plan is to strike the weak flanks, drive armored spearheads deep into the rear, and encircle the Sixth Army completely. It is a gamble on a massive scale. Hundreds of thousands of troops are shifted under cover of darkness. Tanks are hidden in ravines. Artillery is camouflaged. Radio silence is enforced so strictly that units communicate by courier and hand signals. Dummy positions are constructed to mislead German reconnaissance. The steppe goes quiet. Inside Stalingrad, the Germans sense nothing. They continue grinding forward, assaulting factories that change hands daily. At the tractor factory, Soviet defenders hold a strip of land so narrow that some positions are less than 50 meters from the Volga's edge. There is nowhere left to retreat. Paulus reports progress to Berlin. Hitler is pleased. He promotes Paulus to field marshal later. Not yet, but the seeds are planted. The Führer believes victory is inevitable. Stalingrad is nearly taken. The Soviet Union, he thinks, is bled white. On November 19, 1942, the silence ends. Before dawn, the steppe erupts. More than 3,500 Soviet guns open fire simultaneously against Romanian positions north of Stalingrad. The artillery barrage is overwhelming. A rolling wall of explosions that shreds trenches, buries command posts, and annihilates communications. Romanian soldiers fight bravely, but they are outmatched. 34 tanks surge forward to the smoke, their wide tracks devouring the frozen ground. Soviet infantry ride on the hulls. Leaping off as they crash into shattered defensive lines. Anti-tank guns fire until barrels glow red, then are overrun. By midday, the Romanian Third Army has ceased to exist as a coherent force. To the south, the same disaster unfolds against the Romanian Fourth Army. Soviet mechanized corps punch through in hours, exploiting gaps that widen into corridors. German reserves are too few, too far away, and too slow to respond. Paulus receives fragmented reports. Flank units gone. Communications lost. Enemy armor advancing deep. He requests permission to withdraw from Stalingrad and reorient the Sixth Army to face the threat. The logic is sound. The danger is obvious. Berlin says no. Hitler orders Paulus to hold his ground. Stalingrad must not be abandoned. The city has become a symbol, and symbols cannot retreat. On November 23rd, Soviet armored spearheads from north and south meet near the town of Kalik, west of Stalingrad. The trap snaps shut. The Sixth Army, more than 250,000 men, is encircled. Inside the pocket, confusion spreads rapidly. Supply depots are lost. Airfields fall into Soviet hands. Ammunition and fuel are suddenly irreplaceable commodities. Wounded soldiers pile up in makeshift hospitals with no hope of evacuation. The Luftwaffe promises to supply the pocket by air. It is a promise it cannot keep. Winter tightens its grip. Temperatures plunge. Snow blankets the ruins. Aircraft are grounded by weather, shot down by Soviet fighters, or destroyed on improvised airstrips. The daily tonnage delivered is a fraction of what the Sixth Army needs just to survive. Paulus waits for relief. Operation Winter Storm is launched in December, a desperate attempt by German forces to break through from the south. For a moment, hope flickers. Panzer divisions advance, engines roaring, guns blazing. They get close. Then they stop. Soviet counterattacks slam into their flanks, forcing a retreat. The relief effort collapses. The pocket remains sealed. Inside Stalingrad, starvation begins. Horses are slaughtered. Leather belts are boiled. Frostbite claims fingers, toes, entire limbs. Men grow too weak to carry their weapons. The wounded freeze to death where they lie. Paulus sends message after message to Berlin, outlining the situation with clinical precision. The reply never changes. Hold. Fight. No surrender. By January 1943, the end is unavoidable. Soviet artillery pounds a pocket relentlessly, crushing what little resistance remains. Units dissolve into fragments. Commanders lose control. The ruins that once protected the Germans now imprison them. On January 31st, 1943, in the basement of a ruined department store, Friedrich Paulus surrenders the southern pocket. 2 days later, The northern group follows. For the first time in the war, a German field marshal is captured alive. Stalingrad is silent. The city that was meant to be erased has instead erased an army, and with it, the illusion of German invincibility. January 1943. Stalingrad. The cold has become a weapon. The Sixth Army is no longer maneuvering. It is trapped, compressed into a city that is simultaneously dead and alive. Streets are buried under rubble. Factories are gutted, roofs collapsed, stairwells blocked. Every corner is a death trap. German soldiers move like ghosts, boots crunching on frozen masonry and shards of glass, rifles clutched but heavy in frostbitten hands. Inside the shell of the Univermag department store, Field Marshal Friedrich Paulus walks among his men. He observes them without words. Faces hollowed by hunger, eyes glazed with exhaustion. Some stumble. Others refuse to move, letting the walls support their bodies. Discipline exists only in the remnants of rank insignia. Survival is the unspoken law. Food is gone, not scarce. Gone. Bread slices thinner than a finger. Horse meat long consumed. Rations reduced to scraps. Men chew leather belts, boil wallpaper paste. Frostbite blackens toes, and fingers faster than bullets. Infection spreads unchecked. Surgeons operate with saws dulled by overuse. Morphine is non-existent. Wounds fester. Some pray. Some beg. Some curse. Most simply wait. Outside, Soviet artillery stalks every block. It no longer roars endlessly. It strikes with surgical intent, flattening one sector before shifting to the next. Between strikes, silence dominates. Soldiers crawl from shattered basements, looking for water, for ammunition, for anything that might allow them to survive the next shell. Many do not return. The Luftwaffe attempts supply drops, but the city has become a coffin. Planes stagger through snow and smoke, engines straining. Some are shot down. Others crash upon improvised airstrips. Deliveries rarely exceed a fraction of what is required. Fuel, ammunition, medicine, all evaporate faster than they arrive. Survival is now measured in hours. Paulus's staff works by candlelight in basements, maps pinned to damp walls. Communications are fractured. Entire battalions vanish from reports. Orders arrive late, incomplete, or never. Every day, the perimeter shrinks slightly, imperceptibly. The city that was reduced to ash now cages its conquerors. German soldiers notice a shift in the ruins. What was meant to be empty is no longer so. Fires smolder in collapsed buildings. Smoke hides movement. Every crater becomes a trench. Every fallen wall, a sniper's perch. Soviet defenders emerge from basements, sewers, and holes long thought cleared. Their faces streaked with ash, blood, and determination, they move with methodical patience. Paulus realizes the truth slowly, painfully. The city is alive. It refuses to die. Every assault the Germans mount is anticipated, countered, or absorbed. Terrain designed for rapid victory has become an adversary itself. The ruins that were supposed to give freedom now strip it away. The Sixth Army is prisoner to its own destruction. As frostbites and rations dwindle, soldiers do the unthinkable. They conserve energy to survive rather than fight to conquer. Orders are whispered, ignored, or improvised. Men fall asleep on rubble and never wake. Medical stations collapse under sheer volume of wounded. Corpses litter corridors and streets, frozen mid-action. And yet, Stalingrad waits, not for victory, not for surrender, but for the living to recognize the power it now holds. The city, burned to the ground, has rewritten the rules of war. Conquest is no longer measured by territory or morale. It is measured by survival. December 12, 1942. The southern steppe, outside Stalingrad. Dawn arrived behind a curtain of steel-gray clouds, the snow stiff under frozen boots. The distant rumble is different this time. Not the staccato of Soviet artillery, but the low, rolling thunder of German panzer divisions. Operation Winter Storm has begun. Field Marshal Erich von Manstein commands the relief effort. Tanks punch through the snow like iron fists, motorized infantry keeping pace. Supply trucks rattle over frozen ground, engines smoking in the bitter cold. Soldiers push forward with the precision of a clockwork strike, knowing that every minute counts. Relief must reach the Sixth Army before the city's ruins crush hope entirely. Inside Stalingrad, word spreads quickly. A whisper travels from basement to cellar, from ruined factory to frozen street. They're coming! Men who have not smiled in weeks allow themselves a brief, fragile hope. Rations are saved in secret. Weapons cleaned with trembling hands. Every last ounce of energy is hoarded for the possibility of escape. But the city outside is patient. Soviet forces do not panic. Anti-tank guns are repositioned with grim efficiency. Machine guns cover every open street, every crater, every snow-choked alley. Snipers vanish into shell holes and collapsed buildings, eyes sharp, breathing slow. Every movement the Germans make is met with measured violence. Manstein spearheads advance, then slow. A gap appears in Soviet lines. Tanks surge through. Infantry presses forward. Reports arrive from scouts. Bridges intact, roads passable. For a moment, the relief seems possible. Hope ignites. Then reality intervenes. Soviet reserves, drawn from Siberia and the Urals, strike with timing that feels instinctual. Cavalry units ride alongside tanks. Artillery follows in rolling lifts. Supply lines stretch, vulnerable. Fuel dwindles. Manstein's columns slow under pressure. Snow and mud become enemies as deadly as the soldiers opposing them. Inside the pocket, Paulus watches the horizon anxiously. Every report is scrutinized, every movement measured. Soldiers cling to the fragile belief that salvation is near. But the city has other plans. Fires smolder between ruins. Smoke conceals movement. Russian infantry slip, unseen through gaps the Sixth Army does not even notice. The clock ticks. By December 23rd, Operation Winter Storm stalls. Supply lines are overextended. Soviet counterattacks cut off the advance. Relief is not denied by courage alone, but by the methodical mastery of terrain and time. Inside Stalingrad, the Sixth Army feels it instinctively. Hope has arrived, and yet it cannot reach them. The Luftwaffe attempts to sustain the army from above. Ju-52 transport planes stagger under fire, landing on frozen strips riddled with craters. Some are destroyed mid-landing. Others burn while unloading. Supplies arrive only partially, often useless. Fuel, food, medicine, the lifelines of an army, vanish before they can be distributed. Paulus realizes the trap is closing. The city has done its work. By reducing Stalingrad to ash, the Germans thought they could conquer. Instead, the ruins have erased mobility, sown confusion, and made every external advantage irrelevant. The Sixth Army is tethered to a city that refuses to be conquered. January 10th, 1943. Inside Stalingrad. The air is brittle. The cold gnaws at exposed skin. Snow drifts into shattered streets, piling against rubble, filling shell holes, masking corpses beneath its sterile white blanket. The Sixth Army has become a skeleton of its former strength. Men huddled in cellars, factories, and basements where light barely reaches, counting rations in pinches, bullets in handfuls. Hunger is no longer a challenge. It is a constant companion, gnawing, precise, unrelenting. Outside, the Red Army begins its final offensive, Operation Ring. Artillery preparation is systematic, methodical. Shells step forward like clockwork, crushing buildings, flattening streets, severing communication. Where German soldiers once advanced, silence follows, then sudden bursts of fire from hidden Soviet positions. Every step into a street, every stair climbed, is measured in meters, in lives, in seconds. The city has become a labyrinth with no exit. German commanders try to coordinate. Radios crackle, then die. Platoons vanish block by block. Orders cannot travel through the ruins. Officers shout, rifles raised, only to realize no one is left to hear. Soldiers fire mechanically, conserving bullets, conserving life, conserving hope. Discipline is frayed. Exhaustion is universal. Frostbite claims fingers, toes, faces. Men chew scraps of leather, boil wallpaper paste, sleep upright to survive. Death is constant, but not dramatic, merely inevitable. Paulus walks among the survivors, staff officers trailing like shadows. Reports arrive late, fragmented, contradictory. Northern pockets hold unknown quantities of men. Southern defenses collapse under artillery fire. Communication lines are dead, maps obsolete. The city does not obey military logic. Every calculation fails. Every strategy crumbles. Stalingrad is no longer a battlefield. It is a trap crafted from stone, steel, and ash. Soviet troops advance meticulously. They move in small groups, clearing basements and cellars, disarming prisoners immediately. White camouflage blends into the snow and rubble. Submachine guns chatter at point-blank range. Mines booby traps and improvised explosives enforce the lesson of attrition. German soldiers begin to understand the truth without hearing it. They are consumed not by numbers, but by time, terrain, and the city itself. The Sixth Army is reduced to fragments. Units cease to exist between reports. The language of command becomes vague, imprecise. Hold what remains. Delay collapse. Report when able. Survival replaces strategy. The men respond not out of obedience, but habit. Fingers stiff on triggers. Eyes hollow but alert. Waiting. Always waiting. And still from Berlin, the orders are the same. Hold the city. Surrender is unthinkable. Relief is impossible. The illusion of control persists at headquarters while the ground beneath the soldiers' feet becomes a coffin. By mid-January, the southern pocket contracts further. Food is gone. Water is scarce. Frostbite and starvation claim more than bullets. Yet men remain, standing in the cold, fighting not for victory, but to postpone inevitable annihilation. Hope exists only as memory, suspended in frozen air. Outside, the Red Army presses. Each assault is deliberate, methodical, and unrelenting. Each building cleared leaves another intact for the next trap. The Sixth Army has become prey in a city that refuses to be conquered. And Paulus, who once believed in precision and planning, finally understands survival is a measure of obedience, not strength. January 31st, 1943. The southern pocket, Stalingrad. Dawn arrives pale, filtered through smoke and snow. The air smells of frozen blood and ash. Inside the Univermag basement, Paulus walks slowly, staff officers trailing silently, faces drawn, bodies stiff from cold and hunger. Maps are tacked to damp walls, shrinking in size with each day as front lines collapse. Candles flicker, shadows crawling across faces hollowed by frostbite and despair. The Sixth Army is no longer an army. It is a shadow of obedience, a collection of men waiting for permission to survive. Outside, Soviet infantry approaches cautiously. They do not rush. They do not need to. Each step the Germans take is measured. Each breath a balance of life and death. Mortars lie abandoned. Machine guns fire single rounds, conserving barrels. Tanks are frozen hulks, their crews burning maps for warmth. Rations are scraps of bread no thicker than a finger. Some soldiers chew leather. Some chew snow. Each man feels the weight of inevitability pressing on shoulders already stooped by hunger and cold. Paulus receives a final radio message from Berlin. Stand fast. The sacrifice will be remembered. No instruction for retreat. No relief. No hope. He places the receiver down and scans the room. Officers sit in silence, staring at the walls, counting what remains. Men, bullets, days. The city has consumed everything the Sixth Army depended on: mobility, supply, doctrine, courage. Only obedience remains, tenuous and fragile. The Soviet advance is methodical. They sweep through streets and ruins, clearing cellars and basements, capturing the wounded and unarmed. German resistance is sporadic, desperate, fragmented. Some soldiers raise hands. Some fall where they stand. Some do nothing at all, frozen in death or exhaustion. The command structure collapses quietly, imperceptibly. Paulus makes a final inspection of the men who remain. He sees faces marked by frostbite, malnutrition, and months of relentless combat. He sees the blind faith in orders, the stubborn will to survive. He sees the consequences of obedience without question. And he understands fully. The Sixth Army is no longer in control. Stalingrad holds them. It has always held them. A white flag appears at the edge of the ruins. Officers step forward, hands raised. There is no ceremony, no parade of surrender, only the slow, inevitable acceptance of reality. The southern pocket ceases to exist as a fighting force. The city that was meant to be reduced to rubble has instead reduced an entire army. Paulus does not salute. He does not speak. He simply stands, silent among the men he commanded into death, witnessing the final act of Stalingrad. Outside, the snow swallows the sound of boots, the crackle of rifles, the last echoes of a city that fought not for territory, but for time itself. February 2nd, 1943. Northern Stalingrad. The city lies under a pale winter sun, skeletal buildings casting long shadows over snow-choked streets. The fighting has stopped, not with a bang, but with a silence that feels heavier than artillery. German soldiers emerge slowly from basements, trenches, and ruined buildings. Some raise their hands. Some drop weapons and slump against walls. Some remain frozen where they fell, eyes empty, frozen the moment between life and death. The streets are littered with the detritus of annihilation. Shattered rifles, twisted vehicles, helmets cracked and bloodied, papers fluttering in icy winds. Snow is stained with mud and blood, frozen into an unbroken mosaic of despair. The survivors shuffle in columns, gaunt men wrapped in tattered coats, boots tied with wire, carrying what little they can. Many cannot walk, some cannot stand. Guards push, lift, drag, insist. They move because stopping is death. Soviet soldiers advance cautiously, not in triumph, but in precise, controlled method. They check buildings, mark minefields, collect weapons, and secure the wounded. Medics tend to the Germans alongside their own, faces stoic, hands efficient. Zhukov himself surveys the scene, standing over the ruins with a calm authority. His breath fogs in the frigid air. There is no celebration here, only documentation. What remains, what works, what lessons must be learned. Stalingrad is not a victory to exult over. It is a manual written in ash, blood, and snow. Every surviving German unit is processed. Prisoners are counted, marched east, some broken entirely, some still clinging to the remnants of pride. Of the 300,000 men who entered, fewer than 90,000 remain alive. More than 150,000 lie dead amid the ruins. The city that was meant to be conquered has instead rewritten the rules of war, demonstrating that terrain, endurance, and proximity can crush even the most disciplined army. Maps are redrawn. Doctrine is rewritten. Across the eastern front, the Wehrmacht hesitates, recalculates, fears. Hitler rages in isolation. Göring disappears from view. Berlin spins propaganda of heroic sacrifice, but the truth cannot be hidden. The Sixth Army is annihilated. Stalingrad survived. Allied capitals absorbed the lesson immediately. Germany can be beaten. Germany will be beaten. Stalingrad moves again beneath cracked ice, the Volga carrying ash and debris, indifferent to the devastation it has witnessed. Red Army soldiers walk through the skeletal streets with measured respect. They step around corpses, collect weapons, secure artillery, mark each hazard. The city breathes exhaustion, not victory. Its purpose fulfilled. It has broken the arrogance of an army, consumed the pride of a nation, and shifted the tide of a global conflict. From rubble to frozen riverbanks, from surviving factories to shattered apartment blocks, Stalingrad is alive in memory and consequence. Every corner, every wall, every scar wears a lesson. Endurance outlasts firepower. Resilience survives precision. Patience becomes the deadliest weapon. The city was destroyed, but in its destruction it became immortal. Germany mocked Stalingrad, and the ruins answered, unrelenting, patient, decisive. What was meant to be a symbol of conquest became a tomb, a proving ground, a turning point. The Sixth Army did not fall by defeat in open battle. It fell because it could not survive the trap the city itself had become. And the world learned in icy, brutal clarity that arrogance meets its match not in men, but in the ground they fail to understand.